Welcome back to our podcast, Moving to Australia. With me in the studio today is Amitava Deb. Hi, Amitava.
Hello, Arun.
And our colleague Irene Ramsey as well from Tasmania.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest, Subhavna Aurora. Subhavna, hi, how are you?
Very, very well.
Thank you for your time. I know you just got back home, and I really appreciate you getting on a Zoom call with us so quickly. So, we're going to be focusing on community workers who are the backbone of Australia's community services. And let's try to understand what you can do as a community worker here down under. You can be hired in the Department of Health and Human Services in a variety of roles like child protection, mental health, family violence, homelessness, nursing support, aged or disabled care. You could be working directly with the community or provide support to the frontline workers who deliver a service to the community. And the goal of a community worker would be to support the most vulnerable and empower them to make decisions that are right for their health and well-being, so they are able to connect better with their community. So Amitava, starting with you, if one wants to apply their trade here, how does one go about doing that?
Okay, so Australia has a shortage of community workers of all sorts. ENSCO, this is the dictionary of all Australian occupations. They have listed a few occupations on their dictionary. There is the general community worker, then there is disability services officer, family support worker, parole or probation officer, residential care officer, and youth worker. All these occupations are eligible for general skilled migration via state nomination pathway and also via the regional pathway.
So state nominated would be 190.
190 and regional state nomination, that's also a state nomination, that is 491.
Okay.
So that is one way to do it. The other way to do it would be to have an employer who have a need for a community worker in a certain area, and they apply and they meet the requirements. So the employer can actually apply for their temporary short-skilled visa, subclass 482, or a visa through labor agreement. Now, there is another occupation which I have not mentioned so far, and that is the aged or disabled carer. That is pretty much in demand now. And the government said that because there is a shortage, they will fast track the visas. However, the catch is that there needs to be an employer who are ready to nominate them, and the one who is going to be nominated has the necessary skills and experience to perform that job.
Okay. And how long does this process take usually?
The first step would be to get their skills and experience assessed by ACWA. ACWA is the skills assessment body known as Australian Community Workers, I think it's Association, the last A. They would go through the background, and depending on the country where they have done their education and or experience, there are certain prerequisites and requirements which I'm not going to go through in details. I can always discuss with the prospective clients. But once the skills assessment is approved, the employer can then apply under either labor agreement or temporary skills shortage. At the same time, if they have a positive skills assessment and they have the required points, they can apply to the state of their choice through general skilled migration. There's a lot of demand, and all the states are nominating this particular occupation or occupations.
So Subhavna, you work for a NDIS service provider, correct?
That's correct.
So tell us a bit about your company and your role there.
Sure. So to give you a little bit of a background, Healing Hands Complete Care, HHCC, to shorten it up, is an NDIS service provider. What these guys do is basically provide SIL and SDA accommodations. SIL would be supported independent living, and SDA would be specialized disability accommodations, which means that they are either they can live in a normal home, does not have to be specifically designed to disability, or you could have how do I put it? Okay, let me just shorten this piece for you. They provide disability services, could be across people with severe to normal disability, and they can also do day programs, in-home care, and some piece of respite, which is when it's like a vacation for them of sorts. This could also be a trial for people who've never stayed away from family, people with disability who've never stayed away from family. So this is like a 2-day trial run or a 1-week trial, which is what they call respite. And there's a whole lot more if you go down into the details, but I'm just going to sort of stay at a very superficial level. My role is more along the lines of human resource personnel. I manage human resources for the organization, where I look at everything from the very beginning, the intake of the staff in the company, which also includes disability support staff, to looking after the entire employment life cycle, hire to retire, and a whole lot more, and ensuring everybody's happy and compliant. Safe, happy, compliant, precisely that. So that's something that I do with the organization.
So would you be able to tell us how does one get started in this rewarding career?
The beauty about this specific stream is you don't necessarily require a qualification. You could sort of make your headway as level 1 worker. Level 1, I'm saying basis the award. The human resources kicks in every now and then. The SHADS award is what they fall under as far as their Fair Work award is concerned. And you begin off as a basic support worker where you're engaging in a lot of personal care, a lot of domestic care, supporting them through, and not very big goals, just small goals like having a meal by themselves. That's like a really small goal that they could potentially accomplish. Can take them a day, can take them a month, depending on how quick or slow a disabled participant is. However, to retrack back to your question, how does one get into it is if they're lucky enough to get the break as a newbie trainee entering in, or if they want to have a long-term, more sustainable, more rewarding career, is by going through an individual support certification 3, which is supremely supported by NDIS Commission, which basically the commission, the body guarding the NDIS is Safeguarding and Quality Commission. That's what they call themselves. And they provide individual support certification 3. In addition, there is also Cert 3 and Cert 4s available for disability specifically and aging separately. So you could have done any of these, and I think that just gives you that level up than the generic staff who come in and work for years put together. I think that just ups your ante a bit. That's where I come from. I think it just gives you more preference, that extra qualification. This is also coming from a place where after 2 through 3, maybe 4 years of working as a support worker, you could potentially see yourself having the trajectory of a team leader and potentially a service coordinator, house manager, going upward from there. That's how the growth trajectory is for these guys. Across these hierarchies. So
one need not actually have a bachelor's as a youth worker in community service, but you can have the experience in providing services to their community. Yeah. Okay.
For the purpose of skills assessment for migration, ACW have stipulated what is required, what is the minimum requirement for the skills assessment. It is an ACWA accredited diploma or
Ah,
higher course.
sure.
So
The
that diploma
immigration
could be, yes, yes, and
expert
that
talk
is,
there. Yeah.
but that is certificate 4 or higher.
Yeah. Okay.
And they have listed on their website all the accredited courses in Australia. Having said that, they also recognize diplomas or higher courses or even certificate 3 or 4 in other countries as well. So it is part of the skills assessment process. They will evaluate as against the Australian standard. They will evaluate the subjects that have been studied because there's a list of all the subjects they must have gone through, including sociology, social policy, welfare systems and welfare communities, communication, child development, social justice, child protection, mental health, etc., etc. So after they evaluate, they'll say, okay, he meets the requirement or he doesn't. If someone has studied offshore, if they have studied in Australia, it's very easy. It's black and white. They have studied in that accredited institute or have not studied. Once they have done that, it is deemed that they have the required criteria. Now, the interesting thing is that if they have an education, a recent education, which makes them job ready, it is deemed to be equivalent to work experience in certain cases. So one need not have a work experience to get a positive skills assessment. So I'm coming from the, I guess, the immigration angle, and Subhavana is coming from the employment angle.
Yeah.
So I guess what I can see is if someone, Subhavana, if someone has the required education or qualifications and not the experience, would you be employing him?
Yes. Yes. However, at a level one, because with people with disability, you gotta truly have that sense of accountability, ownership. You're practically dealing with our lives. So I think it just takes a little while getting used to. So the experience counts for more, for sure.
And if would the employers who you are working with, Subhavana,
Mhm.
would they be interested in nominating them for the temporary skilled shortage visas?
Specifically, my employer, I would have to go back and check. However, NDIS space per se, I'm
Mhm,
sure there will be a fair bit that would be open to such conversations.
mhm. Right. Okay, good.
So, Subhavna, how much training is involved for someone who wants to start working as a disability or support worker?
Um, I think if I were to just break it down for you, I would say to keep them up and running individually, it would be about a month span. Um, why
Mhm,
I say a month is because first we indulge with reference to service delivery inductions. There are offsite and onsite inductions that we engage in. Then we engage in buddy shifts to ensure that a proper handover has happened. The care plans have been looked at. There are behavioral support plans, medication management plans, meal management plans, multiple plans that have to be, you got to go through. And people will work alongside you to ensure that they're confident of you taking care of somebody with a disability. Um, Now, some of them come from a place where they need one person to support 3 disability participants. And I'm sorry, I might be confusing you when I say participants. I mean clients.
mhm,
So that's what they're called because we want them to feel part of the community. So we call them
mhm,
participants. So one support worker can support up to 3 clients in the
mhm,
accommodation setup. However, in a day program, one person can support 5. And as far as training and experience goes, it can happen in 1 month full-fledgedly where we have absolute, how do I put, confidence
mhm.
in them. But it can happen in a lesser span if they already come with the experience.
Does the level of training and the time taken to train these people also depend on where they come from? Like if someone's from the UK, there is community service there anyway. as opposed to someone coming from Southeast Asia. So do you see a big difference in the time that you need to train them?
I think it's very individual specific. I wouldn't put it in that sense, depending on which part of the country they come from, or the world for that matter. So I'll give you an example, if we still have the time. I'll make it quick. So we have a lot of African community that does it, and they come from a space that community. They're all about community. First aid, medical facilities is not something that they have too much as far as the country goes. From a needs standpoint. So that compassion, and they are self-starters, right? So they have that drive in them because they've been doing it since they were born, or since they were teenagers for that matter. I did come across a couple of people from England. Some of them had the experience, some of them did not, and we struggled with both a lot. Because how things work there versus how things work here will be different country-wise. Paperwork's very different. How people are dealt with from a plan management standpoint is very different. So it really depends on your individual capacity to grasp and how passionate you are towards your role. Largely that.
Okay. And is the training only possible once you're employed by an NDIS service provider, or can people turn to other
avenues?
Other avenues, yes, to get the adequate training, and then they can just go about seeking employment?
Sure. So I actually have connected with a couple of RTA registered companies that provide you with the qualification. They also engage you with NDIS providers, or aged care providers for that matter, NDIA providers, and you can qualify in the sense that you can educationally qualify yourself, and you can also become a trainee with those organizations. I still have to check about whether it's paid or not, whether it's internship or volunteer work. I can get you the specifics if they need be, but it can happen. However, without a qualification and without experience, kind of a tough bet. I mean, I haven't seen that happen.
Okay. And is there a worker screening check before you employ anybody?
Yes, there is. And it's specifically known as NDIS workers check. That's what it's called. And they have that. So you've got to have a couple of quick checkpoints mandatorily before you enter the role, which is the NDIS workers check, first aid, and a CPR. Training, then there is a police check, a working with children check. Preferably full driver's license and a full comprehensive insurance for your vehicle.
And this is all taken care of by the employer, or the individual has to get that done independently?
No. The individual has to always have these up and running. The employer provides fortnightly or weekly allowances to ensure that they can have that going. Okay.
And if you were to describe the life of a support worker or disability worker, what would you have to say?
Exciting. Very exciting. No 2 days are the same. But just to give you a quick snippet, the life of a person as a community support worker in the day program would be more along the lines of taking the participants to the shops, or taking them for movies, or at the beach, or a picnic. That's day program for you, or community participation, what you will. Someone in the SIL arena, which is the supported independent living, is where they're trying to uplift them, or in fact just trying to let them accomplish what they need to on a day-to-day basis to have a better standard of living, quality of life, so to say. So a lot of personal care, a lot of domestic care, meal preps, taking them to their doctor's appointments, again, community participation, taking them out for movies. In some cases, they also have the good fortune of being just a mere companion for emotional support, just to listen to them, what they have to say.
Yeah, I know it is quite rewarding, whether you are a participant as an employer or as a volunteer. I have done that. About 20 years ago, I was actually providing respite care to the Spastic Society of New South Wales, and I took the kids out and the big boys to the clubs, to the pubs, to movies, and it was quite rewarding. I loved that experience.
Yeah.
Other than having empathy and being able to build trust with these people, what are some of the most challenging aspects of the role that your colleagues have mentioned to you?
I think it's never a one size fits all with them. So it always has to be tailored to each client, and you can't think that since you have read this in someone else's care plan, it will also be applicable here. Also, not necessarily what the care plan says follows through. So you got to be very intuitive. You got to know the people that you're working with. And you can't just take it as a mundane job and make it robotic. It never is. It's the most humane job possible.
And what kind of backgrounds do these support workers come from?
They're all across there are a lot of them are Indians, Nepalese, Africans, Aussie citizens, a lot of Australians. Very few Americans or people from England. Very few.
Have you also seen people making a shift from other professions into community work?
Yes, I have a lot. I've seen personally at least 2 to 3 transitions happen from the IT industry. And they're quite passionate about this. That's why the transition has happened for
I
them.
think a lot of people I know of, they probably made the switch because they thought it was an easy path to PR. But later on, they have realized that this is something they always probably wanted to do. They love doing it.
Hmm.
And the people who get the most support through NDIS, are they adults or children?
Could be both. There isn't a specification. However, for children under 9, there is a specific another organization, but mostly over the age of 9 is what NDIS works with.
There is an occupation called youth worker, which is for young adults, not so much for children.
Uh, and what does the average salary in New South Wales look like for a support
Really
worker?
beautiful.
If you can share some light on that.
It's a really good number. So I'm saying,
Okay.
yeah, I'm
Any range
giving
you
you
can?
that. It could range anything between $30 to $40 an hour setup. And this is just the base rate. So your evenings, afternoon, public holidays, weekends are far much higher.
And do you see the openings in this industry pick up over the last couple of years?
I'm sorry, I don't think I'd be the best judge. I've been in the industry myself all of 9 months now. So, but I know for a
Okay.
fact that the demand has definitely come up for sure.
This is a good career option, regardless, whether um, it leads to PR. Most importantly, one should choose a career path carefully and only move if they're really interested in that. If they think that this is something they want to do. And all I can say is that it can be a very rewarding um, career for a lot of people.
Just one question. When you said driver's license, should it be Australian driver's license or can it be a driver's license from their own country?
It can be international as well, as long as they have full driving rights.
Thank you.
It's a very valid question, Irene.
And that's an interesting one because if you are on an international license,
Mhm.
you should be converting that, or you should apply for New South Wales license if you are in New South Wales, or the relevant state license
Yeah,
as soon as you can if you are a PR.
correct. You're absolutely right. If you're a permanent resident, you're right.
If you're not a permanent resident, yeah, okay, you can still continue with your overseas license.
So, Bhavna, would you have any information on which state in Australia requires more community support? Is it New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland?
I think the need is all across because I believe disability per se does not really segregate itself according to regions. But of course, a larger region like an NSW would need more resources because we have more sort of space to cover geographically. Sorry, that's something I would refrain from responding because I wouldn't carry enough knowledge on that end, in all honesty.
Yeah. No, the reason I ask is because this is the most populous state here, all across Australia. So,
Yeah, like I know for a fact that there are a crazy number of vacancies around. I every single person that I know can get employed in a heartbeat. The demand is crazy. People are literally just snatching people up left, right, center. But oddly, that's been the case in a lot of the other states that I've spoken to my counterparts in.
which are some of the biggest NDIS service providers?
So there's Northcote, there's Afford, there's Uniting. Largely these three that do a whole lot. They're the ones that have lasted the longest.
So I guess on that note, we could probably end the discussion here. Yeah. Thank you, Subhavna, for your
Thanks for
time
having me.
and your valuable inputs.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Amitava and
Thank
Irene,
you.
for
Thanks,
joining us on the
everyone.
podcast.
Thank you.
And
Thank
for
you.
those of you who need more information about NDIS or community workers and ACWA, the links to all of that will be in the podcast description. And thanks for listening, everyone. See you next week. Goodbye.